We're going to talk about it. Let's get right into it right now here on Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's what day is today? It's Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. Welcome into this live postcast on YouTube, North Carolina 72, Gardner-Webb 66. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you for hopping in with us. Go ahead and be leaving your questions in the chat. I've got them pulled up over here. What I like to do in these postcasts is give you a couple takeaways, usually four. Obviously, there's more to do than that, but I like to give four things that I'm really picking up on, and then we will take your questions and have some other conversation tonight. And so we're going to get right into it, starting with this. This is just kind of an overall big picture thing. This is not the number one team in the nation right now. And that's okay, right? Like, I think we expected, hey, this team's going to come into the season pretty fully formed. They'll be rearing to go, and it's going to be great. And here's the deal, folks. They're just not there yet. Some teams are further ahead. Other teams aren't. And I think the Tar Heels are not there yet. The problem is when you're playing teams that are kind of fringe 200 teams, it's hard to get, truthfully, a good gauge of what the truth of the matter is. You've got another one of those on Sunday with James Madison, but then next week is where you really pick up heading out to Portland, starting with Portland on Thanksgiving Day next Thursday, and then it really gets going Friday and Sunday. And so from what I'm watching, what I'm seeing, this is not the number one team in the nation right now. I think a lot of that, interestingly, it's the flip of what you expected. And that's actually the second thing I want to talk about. I don't think like you expect a North Carolina team, especially one with this caliber, to come in and just be all guns blazing offensively. And maybe the defense struggles a little bit, but frankly, I think it's the defense that's been playing better than the offense so far. And I know Gardner-Webb in this game shot 41% in the field, which was actually better than North Carolina's 38%. But it feels like the Tar Heels are a better defensive than offensive team right now. And that's what I am going to hang my hat on. And so there you go. There's a couple things right off the bat. Number three. I had said on yesterday's show, there were several things I was looking for in this game. Let me just rattle some of those off. Win the rebounding battle. We're not going to spend much time on that right now because Carolina did 40-38. They won it, but just barely. It's like, okay, great. Double-double for Bacot, Nance assertiveness, make more threes, and be strong inside and what is the depth. And so those are some of the other things I want to hit on, starting with Pete Nance, because that was phenomenal and encouraging. Pete Nance comes out of the gate and he said, oh, you guys are going to keep talking about how I'm playing. Okay, great. Let me just come out and hit 3 first half 3-pointers. And man, at one point he led Gardner-Webb by himself 14-10 did Pete Nance. If you listen to the broadcast, you heard Wes Durham and John Bonner talking about how Coach Davis had said, listen, Pete, I appreciate you just trying to be one of the guys, but I don't need you to do that. I don't need you to defer. I need you to be the dude. And that's what Pete Nance came out doing tonight and scored 16 points in the first half, 5 of 7 from the field, 3 of 4 on threes, 3 for 3 from the free throw line, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, and 3 blocks just in the first half. You love to see that from Pete Nance finally asserting himself. The problem is that you probably noticed right before the halftime buzzer, he was fighting for a ball on the baseline, and it looked like he jammed his finger and was sitting over on the bench with the training staff with Doug Halverson, and came back out and started the second half, but just wasn't as effective in the second half. Picked up 5 fouls. He fouled out of the game in the second half by itself. Only 2 more points, and just didn't do as much there. And so Pete Nance loved that first half, and just I don't know if his finger kind of got to him, but something was different there in the second half. All right, the next thing I want to touch on is this. Carolina finally got a double-double, but it was not at all who you expected it to be from. In fact, it was the opposite of who you expected it to be from. Once again, 3 games in, no double-doubles for Armando Bacot. Came very close yet again. Same as game 1, was 1 rebound shy of a double-double. Armando Bacot does not have a single double-double this season. That's crazy. The double-double tonight came for Mr. RJ Davis, who finished with 14 points and 10 rebounds. You could feel it in the first half. He got several of the first rebounds of the game, finished with 7 in the first half by itself. And it was just, man, RJ is cooking in the rebounds there for himself. But here's the thing for me with Armando. I'm not convinced that he's fully either physically or mentally healthy right now. I have no fact to base that on other than what my eyes are telling me, what I'm, seeing on the court and in other things. And it could just be that he's fine and he's just kind of finding his way, but it seems like he's not getting the lift he typically would. 2 for 9 from the field, was 6 of 7 from free throw line. You love to see that. Carolina as a team tonight, 18 of 21 from the free throw line. That is fantastic, and you'll take that all day, every day. But Armando, there's just like he was just snagging every rebound in sight last year, and that's not happening currently. Now, the good news is all 5 starters had at least 4 rebounds in this game, and so they're coming along in that way. Okay, next thing I want to point out from this game is the depth, because we had heard so much this offseason about the depth and using it and the plans to do that from Coach Davis, and that's great, and you'd love to see it. And I said all summer, all offseason, we think that's going to be a thing, but we're just going to have to wait and see, because all we have is last year to base it on, that smaller sample size. And in that small sample size, there wasn't much depth utilized. Frankly, that's been the case again this season. And in fact, let's look at the numbers and how that bears it out. You would love to see the starters down at around 30 minutes, maybe a little bit under that. And Leaky was 28 minutes for Leaky, 26 for Pete Nance, but that's simply a function of him fouling out. If he doesn't foul out, he would have a lot more. But then Caleb, 36 minutes, RJ Davis, 35 minutes, Armando Bacot, 36 minutes. And so, man, these guys are putting in a lot of minutes against UNC Wilmington, against College of Charleston, and against Gardner-Webb. If you're going to be doing that right now, what about when you go out to Portland? You have to rely on that depth. And so there were 10 guys that played. Seth Trimble, 15 minutes. Dontrez, only 5. Dontrez is not playing many minutes. DeMarco Dunn had 4, 6 for Justin McCoy. Again, that's almost out of necessity with Pete Nance coming out. And then 9 for Tyler Nickel, who was the first substitute off the bench in the second half. But here's the thing. Not only is the bench depth not getting on the floor much, they scored a grand total of 3 points in this game. Seth Trimble made 1 free throw and 1 little floater in the lane. That was it from the bench scoring, and that's just not going to cut it this season for Carolina to be able to do what they want to do. So, man, that's tough. Leaky is being Leaky. This was his 100th start as a Tar Heel. You love to see that. 7 points, 4 rebounds, a block. Great. No assists again tonight for Leaky. That's curious. That's back-to-back games now with no assists for Leaky Black. So, again, an uninspiring performance from this team. You would love to see more out of them, but they're coming along. And again, I just don't believe they're the number 1 team in the nation right now. Another thing that I want to look back at what the final was. At halftime, Gardner-Webb was outscoring Carolina in points in the paint, 18-4, and it finished off 32-14. Holy smokes. Gardner-Webb had 32 points in the paint to Carolina's 14. That is a sign to me of Carolina's inability to do stuff in the lane, both sides of the court. That is going to have to improve. As far as shooting threes, Carolina did hit their most threes of the season this year with 8. But they were 8 for 25, which is, 32% on the game. just not doing it from the 3-point line, not what you expected. And I think that's a big part of what some of the offensive struggles in this game. All right, folks, what we want to do is get ready to take some of your questions. We're going to do that in just a minute. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about BetOnline. BetOnline is your source this season for betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, we've got it all at BetOnline. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, folks, so let's get to the chat, see what kind of questions you have for us tonight. Let's get right into these. Matthew Kataba, what's up, Matthew? Good to see you. So glad you're here. Says, do you think Armando is still feeling lingering effects from his injury? He looks slow and doesn't have a lot of life in his jumps. His timing is off on rebounds, something to watch out for. You and I are right there together, Matthew. I think absolutely something is going on, as I said just a minute ago, with Armando here. To me, it appears that he's not getting quite the level of lift as he usually gets, either on his shot or on his rebound. And as I said earlier, I think whether it's lingering effects from what he had at the end of last season or other things, something is amiss. Hopefully, it's just effort, because that can be fixed, should be fixed. We shouldn't have to be coaching effort, especially for this team that is trying to achieve the things they want to. But there we are. So yeah, Matthew, I absolutely think something is off. But even still, even when he was hurt last year, like in the majority of the national championship games, still finding his way to rebounds. And as you alluded to, something is off with the timing there. So we'll have to keep watch for that. Matthew also says Nance played spectacularly. Obviously, the 3-ball was falling, but he had some creative moves on the baseline. Yeah, hit 2 different turnaround jumpers. One was even an and one. I loved it because he hit a 3 and then had that play on the very next possession, played some good defense, really solid there. And so, yes, Matthew, thank you for bringing all this up. Here is a great reminder from Garrett Clemens. And I do want to say this because I feel like I've sounded pretty negative so far. And if you know me, you know that I'm someone that preaches patience, preaches working towards what you need to do. And so I want to just highlight what Garrett says and say thank you for this. Garrett says, I think this team will be fine. I think college basketball, with all the transfer portal, has made all these games less of mismatches. I think there's 2 things I want to hit on with what Garrett has said here. Garrett, this is a great point. The transfer portal is, many people say that it's going to allow the rich to get richer, similar with NIL. And I don't necessarily think that is true. I think people are going to go where they want to go. If it's for more minutes, if it's being closer to home, whatever it may be with transfer portal, it can serve to level the playing field with people going up or down. Maybe somebody committed to a D1 school and it's like, man, I'm actually not that talented and I should go down to a mid-major, or to a high, they'd committed to a high-level D1 and they need to go down to mid or low major. And then the other thing about transfer portal is I think it's forcing teams to take longer to gel. Reason being, even though they are more mature players, like Brady Manick last year, like Pete Nance this year, even so, it is a microwaved recruiting process as opposed to recruiting high school players to come in and be part of your program. Why is that? Well, they're around you for typically a lot more time, whereas in the transfer portal recruitment, it's just, hey, maybe one trip, maybe a phone call, whatever it is, I'm in, let's do it. And then you got a couple months to ingratiate yourself to your team and your program. And so, Garrett, I'm with you. I think the team will be fine. It's just continuing to figure out what roles everyone will play. Here's another question from Matthew. All the questions from Matthew tonight, I love it. How important is Leaky Black to this team on the offensive end? Well, I think first and foremost, we need to say that Leaky's focus and attention still needs to continue to be on the defensive end, right? That's where he is most valuable to this team. However, if Leaky is scoring 5 to 10, 12 points a night, he had 15 against Charleston the other night, had 7 tonight against Gardner-Webb. I think if he's contributing that, it allows two things. Number one, it is a fifth scorer on the court, whereas anything from Leaky before has been bonus. Not only is it a fifth scorer on the court, but if he proves himself to be consistent, teams are not going to be able to sag off of him any longer. They're going to have to stay dialed in to what he's doing. And that way it frees the other offensive players for Carolina up to have more one-on-one. You can't double down on Mondo in the post, for example, or else Leaky might burn you. And so you love to see it. I also tweeted during the game, I love to see how just unconscious he is with taking a shot now. I feel like in previous years, you see Leaky kind of processing. Should I shoot this? Should I get it to RJ or Caleb or something for a higher percentage shooter to take it? I haven't seen that this season, particularly tonight and against College of Charleston. Just firing on all cylinders, Leaky getting out and going. Garrett says, glad Armando got his dub-dub. Let me look back if they maybe adjusted the stats. Right now, Garrett, it's saying Armando only had 9 rebounds. So I do not believe actually that he did. 10 points, just 9 rebounds. I was hoping he was going to be able to grab one of those last Gardner-Webb shots, but they kept hitting those threes on the last couple of possessions, so no dice. Oscar Tshiebwe, let's mention this, by the way, back for Kentucky tonight and had like 22 and 18, so yeah, he's going to be fine. But if you didn't catch that game, you need to go back and watch it. Michigan State prevails in double overtime over Kentucky. Speaking of other teams, Louisville struggling right now, lost again, 0-3, all 3 by 1 point. Boy, howdy. They thought they had a layup at the buzzer to win. It appeared that it was just on L. Ellis's fingers, and it didn't count because the buzzer had already gone off. And so let's keep looking through. People commenting back a little bit about what I said about bench depth. Like this one says, this is from the Nintendo. That's a name. I love it. Nintendo player who's a nerd. Boom, smash it up. Says we can't risk bringing in bench players if the games are going to keep being this close. We need to start running away with some games to allow our bench some minutes to prove themselves. And I think there is importance in what you've said there, Nintendo nerd. I love it. That's so fun. A big part of this is on the starters to do what they need to do to pull away a little bit. But I do want to push back on this, though, a little bit, because I believe that it would be helpful for Coach Davis to put some of those bench guys in those tougher moments to get that experience. And you hope that they're at the high level, but they might be just a step or two drop off, but they need those experiential minutes for later in the season. Francis Carter, great point here, says Nance should not have been called for 2 of the fouls. At the very least, his 5th was a flop. And I get it. It's so difficult for the referees in real time to call those things. And he kind of looked like he lowered his shoulder, but I really thought he just kind of used his back to continue backing down the defender, and it was a flop. They should have called it I saw Jackson Watkins on the bench calling for the flop. And as a reminder, this year there is no flop warning. That's an automatic 1 technical free throw. And so, man. Let's see if there are any other questions we want to get to tonight. Here's a good one from Schwasty. Do you think this team just got hot at the right time last year? It seems like this is similar to the first half of last season. I don't think it. Let's take both halves of that. First off, I don't think it's just that they got hot at the right time. I think it's that they figured out more definitively their roles last year at the right time. I think that's the important part you said there, Schwasty. Yes, it was at the right time. But if you've heard, it's Dewey Ferris called an all-team meeting and said, we got to figure this out. And that's when they started really to buy into what everyone needed to do their own roles. And so I think, yes, they did get hot, but it wasn't just like, oh, all of a sudden we got better. It's more, that they found what they needed to be doing. And to that point, to your second part, Shwasti, it seems like this is similar to the first half of last season. And in that way, I think it is. I think this team is still trying to, not I think, this team is still trying to find its identity, still trying to find some role definition. Keep in mind, we learned yesterday that we're going to get Puff Johnson back for the Tar Heels in Portland, and hopefully Jalen Washington, Coach Davis said, after that. So perhaps at Indiana or sometime after that. And so you look forward to seeing, I really want to reserve judgment until I see what this team is with Puff Johnson and with Jalen Washington. And of course, remember, it's going to take a while to work both of those guys into the mix as well. And so, it's fun in that way that you get to watch the growth. Think back to last year. While there were frustrating times, there was a lot of growth. We talked a lot about you shouldn't have to preach hustle and energy. There were several times tonight where the team was on the floor, but there are other times when it's just like something is going on. And so going to have to wait and see on this. And that's the approach I'd like to take. I'd like to ask you to take a wait and see approach. Particularly, let's wait on our judgment until after we see what happens in Portland and after we see what happens in Bloomington, Indiana, the Wednesday after Portland. And so those are going to be key and crucial matchups. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Great comments, great questions. Love getting to do these. Look forward to getting together on Sunday after the game. Excuse me there. And so make sure you tune in for that one as well, and check in to tomorrow's show where Pat Kilby and I will get together, discuss this game even in more depth. So keep those comments and questions coming. Do it in the comments and chats on the show tomorrow. But as for tonight, that is it. You can follow me on Twitter at Isaac Shade. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. Make sure you watch Duke and Kansas going on right now on ESPN. That's it for right